Cam Ward said in a new interview that Miami is the right place at the right time for him. Here's what I'm expecting to see starting this Monday in practice.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. And we're only 3 days away from spring football. I am Alex Donno, your host. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and writer for allhurricanes.com. Thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen each and every day. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're also available free on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what the adventure could be around that next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, and Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. We're taking questions on this episode from the Locked On Canes Insiders. You can become an insider. Click the link in the show description below. We get a good one. We'll have to start with this one from Andrew from Chicago. He says, hey, with spring practice coming up, what position battles are you most excited for? And who do you think will be the breakout player? He says, for me, I'm most excited to see how the left side of the offensive line plays out. And my breakout player is Chris Johnson. And guys, yes, we will get to Cam Ward and the quarterbacks. I like your shout out for Chris Johnson because I think when Gio and I were talking about running backs yesterday, we had on Gio Milian. I think that we both, not on purpose, believe me, neither of us mentioned Chris Johnson, and people were asking us in the comments, is Chris Johnson still on the team? Is he still part of the rotation? Yeah, and he's got a big opportunity to step up this spring, and we'll talk more about the running back group in a second. But yeah, you talk about the left side of the offensive line, Andrew. Left guard is going to be something that I watch closely. As goes for spring football and fall camp, media availability is limited. I don't know how many of the team drills and full contact that we're going to be allowed to actually watch, but I always look at who appears to be getting first team reps, second team, and so on. That gives you a clue who's doing well in practices. And even in the individual drills, if I spend a little time watching the offensive line, you can get a pretty good idea of who looks the part and who doesn't. So, yeah, I'm going to be watching players like Tommy Kinsler. I'm going to be watching Matthew McCoy. I'm not sure what his status is going to be coming off injury. I think he's okay now. Assuming he's okay, Samson Okunlola is someone that I'm really going to be watching. And I'm also going to be watching to see how much cross-training is going on, because that's something that Cristobal and Mirabal like to do. And if, let's say first day of practice, if Jalen Rivers lines up at guard instead of tackle, people are going to read a lot into that. Doesn't necessarily mean he's moving inside. And also with Francis Mauigoa, probably going to miss most, if not all, of spring. He had his shoulder cleaned up. So did his brother, the linebacker. With CC going to miss some time. Who's going to be the de facto starting right tackle if CC isn't around? And how many reps is a guy like Markel Bell going to get? So left and right side, I'm going to be watching the offensive line. I'm going to be watching the defensive backfield like a hawk, Andrew. This is going to be the first time I get to see transfer safeties, Mish Powell from Washington, who could also play at the star position, and Savion Riley, the transfer safety from Vanderbilt, in person. I want to see Jadis Richard and Demetrius Freeney, if they're going to make a jump and look good in spring. Damari Brown, will he be locking down first-team reps in spring? How much is Jaden Harris going to step up? I thought he did a good job last year as Cam Kinchin's understudy. Zaquan Patterson, early enrollee freshman. He's been the talk of the town. People are saying he looks like a freak in offseason workouts. And I haven't forgotten about Caleb Spencer either. Caleb Spencer is a true freshman last year. Didn't really play, but he looked good in spring and fall camp. So can he make a jump this year? Another group, and we are going to take a deep dive, and I'll give you my tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, and so on the linebackers later on today. But let me talk about that for a second. I'm going to be watching the young linebackers specifically. I'm definitely going to be watching Wesley Bissainthe because we've been talking about how he needs to step up, and he needs to be the alpha of that group in the spring. Kiko, I mentioned CC had a shoulder cleanup. Apparently, Kiko did as well. The linebacker, Mauigoa, he's going to miss time this spring. So Wesley Bissainthe needs to be the alpha dog of that group. Bobby Washington is someone I'll be watching. He bulked up to 230 pounds at 6'3". That's a guy physically who seems to be ready to take the next step. I'm also going to be watching the new coaches, guys. Chevis Jackson working with the cornerbacks, Matt Merritt with the running backs. You're going to have a couple of running backs who are going to miss some time in spring. Mark Fletcher is going to miss all of spring. A.J. Allen, part, if not all of spring. He's reportedly going to be out. So the aforementioned Chris Johnson, big opportunity. He's one of the fastest players, if not the fastest player on the team. Trevante Citizen, coming off the worst injury luck of all time. He and Zion Nelson both. And by the way, I talked about the O-line. I didn't even mention, remember, Gio was on with us, Gio Million, and he mentioned Zion has been working out. So how much are we going to see of him in spring ball, fall ball? Stay tuned, friends. That is yet to be determined. But yeah, Trevante Citizen is another one. I'm going to be watching him closely. On the defensive side, I guess back to the defense, I'm going to be geeking out to watching Marquise Lightfoot, the 5-star incoming defensive end. I'm going to be geeking out watching him working with Jason Taylor. That's going to be delightful. I'm also curious about transfer defensive tackle Marley Cook. That's the guy who just set the team all-time squat record at 705 pounds. That dude's a freak in the weight room. Is he going to be a freak on the field as well? We'll see if he passes the eye test. And yes, last but not least, I'm going to be watching very closely, as I always do, Cam Ward and Miami's quarterbacks. I mentioned Cam Ward said it when he decided to come down to Miami. Right place, right time for him. He wants to win down here. He wants to build his draft stock. He's already getting along with his teammates. I've never seen Ward throw in person. All the cameras are going to be on him this Monday in practice. And yeah, we've talked a lot about the backup quarterback battle. I'm going to be looking very closely on Monday, and it's, going to be a lot of individual drills that we get to watch. But if there's any separation between Jacurri Brown and Reese Poffenbarger. Now, something else that I'm looking forward to seeing with Cam Ward is just the intensity that he practices with. I don't know, that was Friday. It's a difficult word for me to say today. The intensity he practices with, the way he interacts with his teammates, like how much, because people have kind of speculated he's not really like an in-your-face type of rah-rah guy. I'm going to see it for myself this coming Monday and so on. And obviously, I want to see the arm talent, how he looks throwing at receivers and throwing at the targets and all that. I can't wait to watch Cam in person. Now, something that Mario Cristobal, in his interview on On3 Sports, mentioned yesterday, quote, Cam has not disappointed so far. He's been, first spring practice, but Ward has been doing off-season workouts for the last month and a half. He has been an awesome leader, Cristobal said. He's been awesome as a competitor. We have our fourth quarter drills out there, and he's trying to win all the reps. All in all, really fired up that he's here. I think you'll enjoy watching him this spring. That's what Mario Cristobal said. And here's what Cam Ward, in a new exclusive interview with the Canes Connection Collective, they had put out some clips. I think they finally put out the full version of the interview yesterday. Ward talked about, why he decided on Miami. Initially he had, opted to take his talents to the NFL draft. He changed his mind before it was too late to do so. He said, quote, I took as much time as I could making that decision, Ward said, but I did it my way, the way I wanted to. I feel like I'm at the right place at the right time. I feel like I'm supposed to be here, he said. I feel like I'll fit the offense perfectly, Ward said, from playmaking ability to checks at the line of scrimmage, throwing the ball deep, short, and intermediate. I feel like this offense is going to be able to not only make me become a better player, but better at football, more knowledgeable. So I'll tell you, man, Ward seems he's approaching this incredibly professionally, and he gives off the vibes that he's really, really hungry to go out there and compete. And I say, compete, even though crazy things would happen for him not to be the starting quarterback, but he's still going out there and attacking the offseason workouts like he's got a chip on his shoulder and something to prove. And I'm sure he's going to be approaching spring football the same way. My goodness, we have so much to get to still. And thanks, Andrew, for the question. We're going to be answering more questions on this episode of Locked On Canes. People have been asking me for a linebacker breakdown, as we've done for a few other positions so far this week. We've got a question about conference realignment, and the newest proposal for the college football playoff is a little bit wacky, and that all ties into conference realignment. I'll explain why. We have so much still coming up, my friends. Don't go anywhere. Keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I know you're keeping it up, locked in with Nissan and their awesome lineup. My friends, are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? You ever wonder what adventure could be right around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Class exclusive Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. I'm a big fan of the technology in the cars, and Nissan is like space age, guys. The 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room up to 8, an expansive cargo capacity, and advanced available 4x4 capability. If you haven't seen those new Pathfinders, it's a beautiful car. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop nissanusa.com. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're available free on YouTube. We're part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On, by the way, has launched the first ever 24/7 streaming sports YouTube channel, Locked On Sports Today. It's now available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So, all right, as we've done already this week, we've done the quarterback room. We talked about the running backs and the offensive line yesterday with Gio. I broke down earlier this week the tight end room and the wide receiver room. And I like to put the players in tiers 1, 2, 3, or 4, so on. I don't need to, how many times do I need to count for you guys? But if I look at the linebackers to me, I'm only putting one player in tier 1 heading into the 2024 season. He's an unquestioned starter, and he was the alpha of the room last year, and that's Kiko Mauigoa. Led Miami, the entire team, with 82 tackles last year, was the co-leader in sacks with Ruben Bain at 7.5. He had 2 forced fumbles. I credited Kiko with a safety, even though the ACC referees didn't. Now, again, with Kiko, don't expect to see him a whole lot in spring football. But, obviously, if there's anybody who, he had his shoulder cleaned up, if there's anybody who can afford to miss a few spring practices, it's, the guy who was arguably, one of the 2 or 3 best players on the entire team last year, maybe the best player on the team last year. So rest up and get heal up, Kiko, please. But he's tier 1 all by himself. Now, tier 2, probable starter, but I think he still needs to stand out and make a case that he's taken the next step, and that's Wesley Bissainthe. I expect Bissainthe to be starting next to Kiko. 44 tackles last season, 2 sacks, fine player. I think that internally and externally, they're expecting that Bissainthe has another gear that he's not hit yet, and hopefully this is the year that he hits that. He's got a little more to prove than Kiko. Like Kiko, one of the best linebackers in the country last year. Bissainthe, I still think, is kind of an ascending guy, and I think in his 3rd year, hopefully he can hit that. Tier 3, and I'll say this overall, because I know, again, we've had people commenting like, Donno, you're such a sunshine pumper. Every position group you talk about, Miami's going to win a national championship, deepest room in football. Yeah, I don't necessarily feel that way with the linebackers. I think there's some good young talent there, but there's a lot of guys who haven't really done a lot and have something to prove. Because remember, from that linebacker room, Miami lost Corey Flagg. Say whatever you want to. Flagg had a fantastic year last year. He left in the transfer portal. Miami lost KJ Cloyd, the veteran who played a lot and had some good moments this past season, and Keontre Smith. So you lost some experience and some good players in that linebacker room. Thankfully, Kiko is back, because I don't know what we would do without him this year. So tier 3, competing for playing time or even possible starts. Popo Aguirre heading into his 2nd year. I remember being so excited for this guy coming out of high school. He had some moments last year, practices really well. Marcellus Pulliam, another one who came in as a true freshman last year. He was not as highly touted as Popo and Malik Bryant, who's also in this tier. But Pulliam, yeah, had an interception last year. Apparently, he's really rocking the offseason program. So do not sleep on Marcellus Pulliam. He's a 3-star coming out of high school. He's performing more like a 4-star plus in practices. So, yeah, again, Malik Bryant and Chase Smith are also in that tier for me. And then tier 4, bright future for both of these guys. I just don't know. Oh, I almost forgot. Bobby Washington is also in that tier 3. I forgot to write his name down, but it just popped into my head. And we complimented Bobby earlier because he could be like high tier 3, borderline tier 2, because Bobby has been rocking in the weight room, rocking in the offseason program. He's up to 230 pounds. He looks like a stone cold killer out there right now. So tier 4 are the rookies, the new guys. Adarius Hayes, 4-star, and Bobby Pruitt, 3-star, probably should be a 4-star. He may be a 4-star in some places. Get some seasoning, show us a little something out there in spring in the practice fields, and let's freaking go. So this linebacker room, there's a lot of unproven, inexperienced players. We'll have to see if some of these younger guys, especially guys like Popo and Pulliam and Bobby, if they get opportunities to get on the field a lot, how they handle that, because this room, there's a lot of bodies there. I don't know how good the depth is until proven otherwise. All right, we get a question from Pat Mack, who's prolific. He gets a question on virtually every Q&A because he's ever present. He says, hey, I do have a question regarding conference realignment. If the U, FSU, Clemson, UNC, Virginia Tech, and Louisville join the Big 12, would that kind of make it almost as attractive as the Big 10 and SEC and make it a Power 3? If not, which one of the 2 major conferences would you rather join? He says, right now, I kind of think the Big 10 is a little better than the SEC. Now, first thing, Pat, I'm assuming the first part of your question is a pure hypothetical, right? Because I don't think I've ever seen anything that's linking all of those schools joining the Big 12. I have, I've seen a few reports here and there, maybe Big 12 for Miami, maybe Big 12 for Clemson. I've never seen all of those teams linked to the Big 12. So I'm assuming this is purely a hypothetical. Now, on that hypothetical, if you were to take all those teams and join like Big 12, you're basically remixing the ACC under a different brand, but there are some positives there. The Big 12 has a better TV deal than the ACC does. So more revenue potentially. They're not locked into their deal until 2036, the way the ACC is with their crappy deal. So I guess, that would be better. And the roster, if you add those teams to a so-so Big 12, I think that sort of combining of forces would be certainly better than the Big 12 is right now, and also better than the ACC is right now. So, by combining forces, you do create a conference that's better than either of those current 2 in their current form. And if you guys, any of you who watched the episode of Locked On College Football that I did earlier this week with Kenton Gibbs, you maybe heard Kenton. He made a great point that honestly, in this environment right now where the SEC and the Big 10 are becoming so powerful, maybe the ACC and the Big 12, they should be looking to either merge or form some kind of an alignment. Because, if you can, create some synergy between the 2 of you, that will help you battle the Power 2. As for the current Power 2, if the ACC were to dissolve and Miami may have the opportunity within the next few years, fingers crossed, to join one of those conferences, there's pros and cons to both. All right. The Big 10 would make more sense for Miami from an academic point of view and an administrative point of view. I think Miami just fits that a lot better than they would fit the SEC, but the SEC fits the geography so much better. Certain people will bring this up sometimes, and I don't talk about this enough because a lot of Miami fans are like, let's just get into the Big 10. Everything's going to be great. It'll be so much fun to be in the Big 10. I don't think we talk enough about how, because, Miami, there are some players that come from cold climates, but most of these are Florida and South Florida kids. Can you imagine how tough it would be for Miami to have to go to places like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Nebraska, Iowa, and so on to play outdoor games in November, because that is something that would happen on a pretty regular basis. USC and UCLA are going to experience that as well, but that's something that would happen on a pretty regular basis if you were part of the Big Ten. Be careful what you wish for with that. Now, with the SEC, obviously, they don't really care about academics in the SEC, and I don't know. I kind of feel like the Big Ten maybe has more ambitious leadership right now, but just geographically, the SEC would fit so much better, and also, like, I think from a football standpoint, I think the SEC is still maybe slightly stronger in my opinion. That's just a matter of opinion. So I think the SEC would make more sense from a football standpoint. The Big Ten makes more sense administratively. I would not complain either way. Like, if Miami were to have the opportunity to join either of those power conferences, I would just be relieved to be in one of them, no matter which one that is. So that's the best way I can answer your question. Oh, and by the way, you talk about the importance of maybe getting into the Power Two within the next few years. So they literally just expanded the CFP to 12 teams. They're already talking about expanding it to 14. But here's the kicker. Part of this proposal about expanding to 14 teams would include the two first round buys, because I guess there would be two first round buys in that scenario, would be guaranteed only to teams from the Big Ten and the SEC, which is like, that seems like a pretty big advantage to being in one of those conferences. So it's and I don't know if that's going to be the final draft, if that's what's eventually going to get approved. But they're talking about guaranteeing first round buys to Big Ten and SEC winners. Another reason why you want to be in one of those conferences. All right, so my friends, got a question about the state of the new football operations center. We got some more stuff to get to. You know what you want to do, my friends, is we're a few days away from spring football. You want to keep it locked right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm definitely not done with FanDuel. We're winning money this basketball season. We're having an incredible time. NCAA tournament is coming up. Conference tournaments coming up. The NBA is starting to heat up now. I mean, February, March is when I really start caring about the NBA. That's when the Miami Heat really start caring about the NBA. You can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, which are so much fun, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Can't ruin a Friday. Thank you so much for making this Friday episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. For the everydayers, if you want to take that everydayer experience to the next level, sign up for our exclusive SMS texting service, Locked On Canes Insiders. We've been answering questions from the insiders today. You can click the link in the show description below. You get one-on-one text with me right from my phone to yours and vice versa. Breaking news, recruiting scoops. I'll be updating spring practices coming up next week. Try it free for 14 days. And then if you like it, you can opt in for $4.99 a month. We give you a lot of added value there on Locked On Canes Insiders. All right, we get a question from, this person didn't sign the question. He says, hey, a relative of mine played for Urban Meyer at Florida. He was a punter. His special teams coach was Urban Meyer, as he emphasized special teams. I am disappointed we don't have one designated on our staff. We have the potential to make game-changing plays on special teams. Our return game is historic via players like Hester and Duke Johnson. I'm anxiously awaiting for us to designate a special teams coach, preferably Mario. Yeah, I'm sure that there's reasons why Mario doesn't. I mean, he does a lot of work as well with the offensive line. The reason why Miami doesn't have a separate designated special teams coach is their staff is so full. It's becoming pretty common around the country to not have a designated special teams coach. That's handled mostly by analysts. So listen, I totally agree. Special teams is really important. and it's a big part of Miami's history. I think it's also about the players you have. I mean, Miami does have a very successful kicker right now, a very successful punter. And what we haven't had in recent years is consistency in the coverage teams and consistency in the returners. Now, as far as the returners go, you're getting more and more bodies in there who can do it, right? Players like Ray Joseph, Chris Johnson, who are, they're going to be a little bit more dependable because, I think you worry about like true freshman. Is he going to muff punts? Like, they're going to become more dependable as time goes on. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey could be another option. There's Zaquan Patterson, who could do a lot more than just return on special teams. This guy can block kicks and make tackles, everything. I'm hoping, because listen, again, I know from the outside looking in, it's easy to look at Miami's coaching roster and say, there's not a designated special teams coach. Therefore, that must be an area of weakness because of that. That's an assumption. Okay. I don't know if that's a fair assumption. I think as the depth gets, because listen, a lot of special teamers are not starters. So as the depth gets greater on Miami, I think you're going to see the special teams output improve. But I agree with your sentiment. Special teams, incredibly important. And Devin Hester just got into the Hall of Fame. You remember how electric that dude was? I want to see more electricity like that. We get a question from TS who says, hey, what's the typical weekly menu and snacks for the players? Is it controlled by a nutritionist? How does it compare between the D-line, O-line, or cornerbacks and wide receivers? So actually, I reached out to someone this morning who can hopefully like give me kind of like the detailed regimen and menu. So I don't want to say too much at risk of, saying something that's factually incorrect, but I do know training table meals are very nutrition centric, and sports science is at the heart of that. And so, yeah, they do have designated meals, and it's not a one size fits all. They are tailored to different position groups and even individual players' needs when it comes to getting the right nutrition, the right foods for recovery, and obviously not the type of foods that are going to make you fat and slow and sweaty. So yes, it is, to answer that part of your question, it is very nutrition centric. And I think the other part of it is, it's up to the individual players how much of a lifestyle that becomes, because, they can only control what you eat when you're in the building. When you're not, like I can say, and maybe this isn't the best example right now because people are saying, oh, he didn't have a good showing at the combine yesterday. But I know Leonard Taylor, I'll use him as an example of someone who told me last year, he had this was through his NIL agency. He had a meal, like a chef that would prep meals for him that were, specifically based to his nutritional needs. And that was something he was doing, in the time he was not at the facility. So he was really taking it seriously, and hopefully every player on the team takes that seriously. Because if you're eating lean meals in the facility, but then you're ordering pizza at your dorm room late at night, it's counterproductive. But yeah, it's very much controlled by nutritionists. Get a question from Spade who says, hey, what's the status on the football operations center? So last I heard, the completion of the new facility, which is that high-tech facility that they're building, it's set. I think the completion is set for summer of 2025. So this will be a little more than a year from now. I don't know if that timeline has changed or will change. When I'm on campus on Monday, I'm going to try to ask some questions about that. So thank you for the questions. And folks, remember tonight, and I'm hopefully going to do an episode Sunday to break down the series. And man, I hope it's a sweep for Miami, but the Hurricanes starting tonight, 7:00 at the Light. They're opening up a 3-game set with Florida. Florida has had Miami's number in baseball for a long time. Now, football, hopefully we kick their butts on August 31st. But baseball, the Gators are coming to town tonight, 7:00 at the Light. Tickets for that game are actually officially sold out. There are tickets of it because, that means, like, I think the original run on Ticketmaster and stuff officially sold out for tonight at 7:00. There are tickets available at Game Time, which is our ticketing sponsor, the Game Time app. I saw them this morning starting at $36. So if you are looking for tickets because you want to go to the opener tonight, I'm not sure. I think Saturday there's probably still available, but tonight is officially a sellout. You can find tickets at Game Time, and hopefully on Sunday we'll get our guy Raymond. And I want to try to track down Brandon from Locked On Gators and maybe we'll do a post series breakdown of that on Sunday. So thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Right place, right time for Cam Ward. Let's see it. I said it yesterday, mutually beneficial. Miami benefits from having an upgrade at quarterback. Cam Ward benefits from having a much better offensive line than the one that he played with last year. I had the stat for you guys. I'll repeat it for those who didn't watch or listen to yesterday's episode. Washington State, the team Ward played for last year, they were 113th in America in sacks given up. 113th. They gave up 36 sacks last year. Miami, 17th in America, gave up a total of 16 sacks last year. So, a few different faces on the O-line, couple different faces on the O-line, but I still expect Miami's O-line situation to be much better than the one that were. And honestly, with those 16 sacks Miami gave up last year, that was with non-mobile quarterbacks, right? Cam can elude a lot of that pressure that Tyler Van Dyke and Emory Williams were not able to do. So I think Miami's going to be in good shape there. We will talk to you guys again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.